Okay, so we up and running on the inside, both places here. Did I? I think it is, yeah. All right, cool, no problem. Yep, there we go. All right, folks, so this is officially good morning, and good to see everybody on today. All right, oh, hold on, I wonder if I could do this instead. Yeah, hey, oh, look, oh, wow, let's go back to that. I've seen too much gray here to zoom in on that. All right. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, guys. So good to have you guys on today. Hopefully, a few more people will show up, but I mean, they could always check the replay, right? So we are at the 25th of January. So as of next week, Saturday, we are in February. Yeah? So we've rounded off job costing and activity-based costing already in Module 2. Today, we start process costing. I'm seeing it taking 3 weeks. So this week and then the first 2 weeks in February. Thereafter, we start the last topic, which is called marginal and absorption costing. Right, so that one is about 2 weeks as well, at a stretch of maybe 3, because the last 2 times I did it, I really like that topic, and I tend to try to teach too much in the first session. So in 2022, when my wife was pregnant with my first son, I remember that happening, and I had to stop class and carry her to the hospital because she was very dehydrated and had to get drips and all kind of madness. So I don't know if that factored into me going overboard trying to overteach. And then in 2024. Well, she was pregnant with my second son, but that stuff wasn't happening at that point in time. And I still ended up overteaching in the first class. So I had to kind of backtrack and restart. So I am going to avoid that this time by revamping my plan. All right. Anyhow, but long story short, that will be from the 15th. Sorry, we are in February. Yeah, from the 15th, 22nd. Now, the 1st of March is a little tricky. Now, for those of us in Trinidad, we know Carnival is the 3rd and 4th of March, right? Normally it's earlier, but that's just how the moon lined up this year, right? So I don't plan to be fetting or to be staying out late and not being able to have class. So most likely, we'll take a vote, right? Here's Joshua. All right. Morning, Joshua. How you doing? Good to have you on. All right, so we're just discussing the plan for the next couple of weeks. All right, so yeah, so we'll probably finish my process costing by the 8th, and then we could spend a few days on, absorption versus marginal costing, which is also called variable costing, marginal and variable, right? So again, I think I have 2 sessions planned for that, max 3. After that, we will be in Module 3, all right? Module 3 starts off with something called cost, volume, profit analysis, or break-even analysis, which is actually another favorite of mine. It's a little more math-based. It doesn't have much accounting in it, to be honest. A couple of cost curves and some formulas based on that. And I scaled back how much I teach in terms of the math behind it, so it takes a little shorter now. So yeah, I could see that taking maybe 2 days. Sorry, live disconnected. What? No, okay. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I had some technical difficulties this week. On Monday, that caused me to not have a math class. Hold on, until I had to go out. Sorry about that, J Bones. Yeah, man. Anyhow, yeah. So thankfully, it was sorted. Anyhow, right. So we should start Module 3 somewhere around here. But long story short, we're probably not going to be able to quote unquote revise for mock. Right. So whatever we're doing at that point in time, we could always go over the notes and the questions we did. And just like Cassidy did, you could always send me any questions you might have if you're not sure, anything you need me to correct. Although, don't send me a whole set of stuff because I probably won't be able to get through everything, but 1 or 2 things should be fine. All right. So we should start Module 3 in early March. And again, that's break-even analysis. And then we're going to be doing variances. So variances is my least favorite. At least there's a second piece of it. The first part I could do, I wouldn't say with my eyes closed because I'm a little rusty on some parts, but it comes back to me pretty easily. And by now I have it down to a bit of a process, right? And then after that we have, hold on, let me show you, right? Right, as variable absorption and Module 3. I feel like I forgot something. Budgeting, I forgot budgeting, right. So no, we'll do budgeting before standard costing. So yeah, that's 3 weeks as well. So where were we? We were in the middle of March, right? So cost volume, so CVP is 2 weeks, budgeting I'll try for 2 sessions. So then we're in April, right? Variances is about 3 sessions, and then in April, we'll also have the Easter break. And then what we'll try to do in the Easter break is have a couple more classes during the course of the week, like how we did in the Christmas break recently. And then we could round off capital budget in there, and then we're done, right? And then we'll just triple check the timetable to see when the exam is, the paper 2, the paper 1s, and we will tailor our sessions to do as many past papers as we can up until that point. Now, as you know, we work from the past papers a lot of the time. Right? It's very, ever so often I'll bring an extra question from our old text, but I mainly teach from the past papers, right? Anyhow, okay, so with all that said, I think I've given enough time for extra people to come in. I know Jonika and Julia sometimes come a little late. Keisha, Naomi, I don't double check. I didn't see Naomi last week, I saw a week before. All right, anyhow, but usually they'll message and say something at some point in time. All right, so folks, without further ado, let's get into process costing. All right, so before we start taking notes, I like to kind of give you a bit of an intro, so it's kind of, you have a bit of context, right? So I won't go as far back as usual, why do we get into business, blah, blah, blah. We are dealing with costing systems. Module 2 deals specifically with costing systems. We've met job costing, and like we know, the whole point of a costing system is to be able to effectively capture all the costs incurred in the production process, mainly production, but of course, yes, we have non-manufacturing and non-production costs that have to be captured effectively as well. So we're not discounting that, but we're focusing specifically on production environments, right? So we have job costing, which was the first one we learned. And we said a job is a unit of output, and it is like a custom item. Sorry, is mine? Yeah. It's like a custom item. So like so y'all in Form 6, y'all would have had like a grad. So some of y'all might have gone to a tailor or a seamstress to make a dress, or you may have bought a suit or a gown, and you may have had to have it altered or adjusted. So you would have carried it to that person, and that job would be specific to you. Right? If somebody also was, let's say, building a house and they hired an architect, right? The work that the architect does on that person's house, the designs, etc., would be something specific to that person. So units of output are separately identifiable. They are easily distinguishable, usually, from one another. Right? There may be similarities. For example, if two gentlemen bought basically the same size and color suit and had to have similar adjustments, it might look the same, but the process might have been different, right? So sometimes things may appear a little indistinguishable, but they will, as they say, the devil is in the details. Let me just let in Naomi. Morning, Naomi. Good morning. Good to have you on today. All right. All right. So you didn't miss too much. I just started talking about process costing, right? So this is the topic for this week and the next 2 thereafter. All right. Yeah, so in job costing, which is kind of what we just finished the week before, we have units of output that are separately identifiable, easily distinguishable from each other, right? And then one of the criticisms of job costing was, of course, we know we have 3 components of cost. Always remember that, right? That is, like, to me, the core, the entire core, or at least part of the core of unit 2. Right? It's costing system. So you have 3 components of cost: direct materials, direct labor, and of course overheads. Now, as we know, direct material and direct labor tend to be relatively easy to account for and to capture and to attach to units of output. The overheads tend to be the difficult ones because we usually have to make estimates, and of course estimates don't always line up with the actual values of the costs incurred, so we have adjustments to make. We mentioned under absorption, of course, or over absorption. We either put too little or too much cost, and then you have to go and adjust. And we looked at that very briefly, as a matter of fact. Now, one of the criticisms of job costing was that it does not treat with overheads in an accurate way. And what I mean by that is that it assumes that there's one cost driver for all the overheads in the production environment. So if you have a labor-intensive production environment, it assumes that direct labor drives all of the overhead costs, which could be true for many of them, but not necessarily all, right? And similarly, J.K. Cougar, morning, yeah. So in a capital-intensive production environment, machine hours is usually assumed to drive the overheads, and that could be true for stuff like electricity and depreciation and maintenance. Oh, hold on one sec, let me let in Julia. Hey, morning, Julia. How are you doing? No problem. We just doing a little intro to process costing. How was school yesterday? Did you make it to school yesterday?
Actually, no, I did not.
Oh, okay.
I was
All right. Okay. Well, that seems like it was a good use of your time.
Yeah, I
So
didn't even do anything in school. So I
well,
guess
there you go. You save yourself some time, money, and extra time later you'd have had to use to do the project. All right. Cool. Right. So what I was saying, so one of the criticisms of job costing is that it doesn't treat with overheads properly in that it assumes one cost driver drives all overheads. And as we saw with activity-based costing, what we do is we take the overhead cost pool or the overhead pool, all of the different items that are in overheads, like rent and rates, maintenance, depreciation, sorry, and what have you. So we had something setup costs, inspection, lots of other things, right? So we break up the overhead cost pool into specific activities and we do an investigation to see what actually drives the cost of this activity. What is this activity's cost driver? And we identify it and we say, okay, so this is the cost of this overhead. This is the volume of the activity. So we'll divide and get an activity rate, like an overhead rate, specific to that activity. And we do that for all activities. So of course, it's a very time and labor intensive process. And it is supposed to kind of, like I said, make the costing system more accurate. And over time, of course, you'll have a better costing system, better cost attached, and better selling price, and you should be more competitive in the market, etc., etc. So the benefits hopefully outweigh the costs over time, right? So we have that. So and then of course we saw we could apply it to service costing as well. So of course services are not producing things, but they will still have direct labor because of course to provide a service you need a human, right? And there can be direct materials, right? There can be materials used specifically on those particular jobs, right? Now, process costing shifts us into a different production environment, right? So most of you all here may have done POB, maybe economics at the O level, maybe you're doing MOB or econ now, maybe entrepreneurship. So something it might be, a phrase with which you might be familiar is called mass production. Now I know we in Trinidad and Carnival coming up, so not that kind of mass, right? Although that could be technically used as an example, right? So when we talk about mass, MASS production, right? Like production on a massive scale, we're talking about producing hundreds, thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of units of output, right? And those units of output tend to be pretty much indistinguishable from each other. They tend to be exactly the same, right? Perfectly substitutable. Another word is perfectly fungible, right? You all might have heard that word fungible being bandied about past couple of years with these things called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. If that's something you paid attention to. Although I don't know if what's the status of that now. But anyhow, that's a whole different conversation. Yeah, so we have that kind of production environment. And as we could probably at least consider, it's not going to be the exact same as a job costing production environment where they're making separate items for separate customers, right? So, for example, if you're producing, the usual examples we talk about are like manufacturing soft drink or juice or drinks like that on a large scale, right? Because we know we could sometimes we go to like little good farmers markets or the market or little things where people make juice on a small scale and it's very much handmade, right? But of course, with big companies that when you go in the grocery and you see dozens and ten scores of juice boxes landing on the shelves, we know those are mass produced, and we know it's not people making those. I mean, obviously you're gonna have some human element some way somehow, but you're probably gonna have that on an assembly line, right? So a process costing environment is where we are mass producing. So we have a challenge there, and the challenge has to do with work in progress, right? The challenge has to do with, okay, look, we know what we're trying to do is find a cost per unit. That's what we're trying to do. What are the three components of cost? Direct materials, direct labor, and overheads. Okay, cool. So we have the components of cost. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to have this production line running, and at some point in time, we're going to end work for the day, and there are going to be some things left in progress, but they are going to have costs attached to them. So how do we cater for that? Do we do like any manufacturing account and just add the opening value of work in process and minus the closing? there is an element of that, but there's also a concept called equivalent units. Because what's going to happen is that in order to kind of accurately measure the cost of these things, is we have to break them down to like a common unit of measure. So like if you had things in like when you were doing CSEC maths, and you might have had something in liters and something in milliliters, or something in centimeters and something in meters, and you can't multiply different units together and get anything meaningful. You have to convert to a common unit of measure, and that's what equivalent units does. It allows us to have a common unit of measure to more easily attach costs to units of output. Okay, so I think I talked enough there, and of course, well, like I said, I will be giving you all notes as your custom, right? I have a notes page right up here. So we have one relatively large box with several paragraphs, several short paragraphs of notes. Then I have 5 steps in process costing, and then the process costing format or worksheet is quite long with several sections. What I do is I break it up into one section at a time, right? So what you will see as we go along is section 1 will have its own page by itself. Then I'll go on to the second page. I'll have the section 1, then add section 2. So I'm not going to give you a single page with all the sections, right? That'll come. That'll actually be the very last page. But you'll see it as you go along piece by piece, right? Because you know me, I like to break things up into pieces to make them more digestible. And here is Keisha. Good morning, Keisha. How are you today? All right, good to have you on. Right, so I just gave the little intro talk to process costing. So I'm now going to start the notes. So technically, you're on time. All right, so good to have you on. How was Barbados today? All good weather?
Yes.
All right, good. Glad to hear that. Yeah, okay, cool. So process costing, right? So this, sorry, one sec. I have a little cord situation here. Oh, I can't. Right. So this costing technique or costing system, if you rather, right, is used in production environments, which, like I said, are essentially mass production environments, right? I.e., that is to say, the units of output being created, that's how you spell being, being created are all identical or fungible. What does that mean? It means they are perfectly substitutable. Sorry, the live keeps disconnecting the backup stream. I don't know why. I'm gonna mute that because that's it disconnects and reconnects one time, so it just was annoying. But yeah, I think I mentioned to you guys I had some technical difficulties Monday that caused me to have to not have a math class, and I had to send a replay to all my students. So somebody came Tuesday to kind of sort it out, and we discovered one of my components that actually helps with internet access no longer functions. It probably burnt out, and I didn't even know. Anyhow, but that's a different story. But thankfully, things are working the way they're supposed to work anyway. Right, so units of output being created are all identical, fungible, or perfectly substitutable, right? Each unit is indistinguishable from, each unit is indistinguishable from each other, from the other one, from the others. From any other, okay. All right, so everything is basically the same, right? So the issue with costing in this type of environment is TOOP, right? Arises when there are incomplete units at the end of the production period. This makes the application of the formula right? Oh, come on, what am I doing? What's happening here? No, we're on the answer here. Right, application of this formula, which is the cost per unit. So cost per unit is normally, right, total costs incurred divided by total number of, what's number? Okay, cool. Clearly it's Scandinavian, right? Total number of units produced. Producted. That's an interesting word. So it makes this formula, right, essentially impossible to apply, as the denominator, the number below, will have two different, sorry, let's some water, real quick. Hey, Ravina, hey, Munel, how you all doing? Joanne, morning. Sorry, two different types of units, right? Completed units and incomplete units. All right. We use the concept of equivalent units to help overcome this issue. All right. So basically what equivalent units is, right? So hold on. Yeah. So equivalent units is a way of measuring output in terms of, hold on. Sorry, I have my notes. I'm just trying to come up with a different phrasing just to kind of keep my brain active. So equivalent units is a way of measuring output. In terms of, that requires the total number of raw and process units, requires units of output to be multiplied by their degree of completion, either in a percentage form, percent or fraction form. Okay, I'm done with that. That's just not right. So equivalent units is a way of measuring output that requires units of output to be multiplied by the degree of completion in order to express all units of output in a common unit of measure. And that would help the formula, will help us be able to apply the formula above. All right? All right, so the equivalent units is equal to percentage of completion multiplied by the number of units I'm missing a phrase there. Right, okay. So right, so this concept comes from asking the question, how many units of output would have been produced if instead of producing batches at a time, we focused on producing 1 unit at a time, right? So like I said, with process costing environments, we're talking about mass production environments. So when we pour, let's say we were making paint, and you pour liters of these different, I want to say ingredients or chemicals into a big vat, and you mix them up, and and after they're mixed up and they're settled and they're treated, they're then put into individual paint cans, right? So instead of mixing up this big vat, suppose you mix up just enough to make 1 can at a time, right? So that's kind of where the equivalent units concept came from. It came from asking that question. So instead of making like 1,000 liters at a time, what about if we made 1 liter at a time, right? What would be the equivalent of this, right? If we have, let's say you have 4 steps to a process, and so you have 4 steps, right? And each step accounts for an equal proportion of work. So each step is 25% or a quarter of the total process. Just a simplifying assumption, right? So if 10 units go through the first 2 steps, those 10 units would be 50% complete. And 50%, if you multiply 50% by 10, 50% is a half, right? A half of 10 will give us 5. So 10 units, 50% complete, is equivalent to 5 units, 100% complete, right? So we call that 5 equivalent units. So it's 5 equivalent units. So 5 units would have been made, 5 100% complete units would have been made if we focused on making 1 unit at a time instead of making 10 at a time, right? Let's say there were 3 steps in the process, and each step was 1/3, right? So if you took, let's say, 30 units and put it through 1 step, those 30 units would each be 1/3 complete. And if you multiply 1/3 by 30, 1/3 of 30 is 10. So instead of having 30 units, 1/3 complete, we have 10 equivalent units of output, right? So what that means is that instead of having 30 units, 1/3 complete, you could have had 10 fully completed units, 100% complete, right? So that's basically what equivalent units, that's what the measure is, the concept is how many units could have been completed if we made 1 at a time. And it allows us to be able to then use this formula here because it gives us a common unit of measure, right? Because if we didn't, then we had, like, let's say you had 1,000 units in production, 100 of which are incomplete. 100 are 25% complete, 200 are 50% complete, and then the next 7 are 100% complete. So we can't divide. We can't divide total cost by different levels of thing, right? So anyhow, let me finish this text box real quick because it's 10:35 and I want to start work. All right? Okay, cool. So there is an assumption that has to be made to facilitate this, which is that the degree of completion of units of output can be accurately estimated. Right? Further, wait, where did it go? Right. Right. Further, it is assumed that the conversion costs, right? And conversion costs, we know, are direct labor plus overheads. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Right, the conversion costs, right, are incurred uniformly throughout the process, production process, right? Whereas all direct material costs are added at the start of the process. Again, it's a simplifying assumption which I have seen them relax. So I've seen them ask questions without that happening, right? And it doesn't make it harder per se. It's just one little extra multiplication you have to do. But again, you might not know anything about the topic at all, so that might be meaningless to you right now, right? So n dot b dot this latter assumption re the direct materials is sometimes relaxed and material costs can also be assumed to be incurred uniformly throughout the production process. All right, so for example, if there are 1,000 physical units in production, right, that are 75% complete, then this is equivalent to, right, 1,000, multiplied by 75%, which is equal to 750 equivalent units. Sorry, I should have put, so 1,000 physical units, right? So 1,000 physical units multiplied by 75% complete is equal to 750 equivalent units, right? Okay, cool. So I know that was quite a bit. So we'll take a couple of seconds to kind of recover, right? So we use this concept of equivalent units to kind of make the, to normalize or to smooth out the differences in the degrees of completion to facilitate an easier calculation of a per unit cost. Now, when you see the full production cost, you might be like, that's not simplified. It's not. You lied to us. All right. But again, with all things, as you grow up and you go further along in your studies and your qualifications, you will encounter more and more complicated ideas. And the hope is that you grow, right? The truth is that if you apply yourself, you grow, and more complicated ideas can be processed, understood, and applied. And you can do the work even though it is difficult. I even saw, I don't know if you guys know who Miss Rachel is, if you have any younger siblings. And she says these affirmations and was like, you can do hard things. I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. And then one of the guys, one of the gurus I listen to on YouTube, a fellow called Tom Bilyeu, who I call him $1 Billion Bilyeu because he created a company called Quest Nutrition. I think he and his wife started it in their kitchen, physically making protein bars, and then built a factory, etc., and carried it to a $1 billion valuation, I think, in, was it 2 years? And it was like a ridiculous, like they had like 57,000% growth in 2 years or whatever the case was. They were number 2 on the on Inc., which is like the fastest growing companies in the States. And so I don't know that they paid him $1 billion for the company, but so he has a saying that there's a belief, he calls it the only belief that matters. I don't know that I agree it's the only belief that matters. I think there are other things that you can believe that are worthy of belief and that matter as well. But he says if you put time and effort into getting good at something, you can get good and better at it. But you have to be willing to of course, look the fool initially, making mistakes. And of course, he says mistakes or failure are just the most information-rich data stream on planet Earth. They tell you what's wrong and what didn't work. So now you know what not to do, right? So we have to learn to reframe things in our mind and not feel badly about making mistakes. Now, of course, yes, failure and mistakes don't feel nice, but we have to, of course, kind of grow past that feeling thing and realize that life doesn't necessarily stop, right? I think Winston Churchill said that success is not final and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Anyhow, enough nice sayings and these things, right? Although sometimes we need those things. We need to work on our mindset. As a matter of fact, I just showed you guys. The same Tom guy, he did a kind of poster series with who's this again, boy? Iconic, right? So it's a fish with a shark tail or a shark fin, and it says mindset is everything, right? So he has another saying. He says that you can't make a racehorse out of a pig, but you can make a really fast pig, all right? And that's how he considers himself, a really fast pig, because he says he used to waffle or marshmallow his way through life and used to spend hours on a morning while his then girlfriend was we were just in bed wallowing in self-pity, and he is now completely different. Anyhow, let's get to 5 steps in process costing, right? So there are 5 steps in process costing. So we have to account for the physical units. 2, we have to calculate equivalent units. Then we have to identify the costs to be accounted. That's not accounted, sorry. Accounted for. Sorry, one sec. Yeah. 4, we have to calculate the costs per equivalent unit. And 5, we have to assign those costs to the different items and output, like your work in process at end and the units completed, right? So cost assignment, right? Right. Right, and then the other note is that there are two there are 2, whoa, hold on, what's going on here now? Sorry, give me a sec. I'm not sure what's going on with this thing. One second. Right, okay. That's fine. Freezing occurring in my life. That's weird. Hold on, let me make sure the YouTube stream is still up and running. Yeah, okay, that seems perfectly fine. Oh, we only on like 38 minutes now? Wow, it seems so much longer. I guess I talked too much. even for myself. All right, so yeah, enough talk. Let's start again to some work. So we have to, oh no, that's not the window I wanted. Right. Again, not the window I wanted. Right, there you go. Right. There are 2 methods you need to know for CAPE, right? We have the weighted average or AVCO, right, weighted average, and the FIFO, right? So that those phrases might look familiar because you'd say, well, so that's from stock valuation. Are we going back to stock valuation? No, not exactly, not really. But the concepts will apply. All right. Now, when I did process costing in Form 6, we learned FIFO right off the bat. And when I went to UE, we had to learn the weighted average. So of course, I was reluctant because I already know FIFO, what I have to know AVCO for. And when I learned the AVCO, I was like, well, this is easier. So I start with the weighted average and method, and then I go on to the FIFO method. So today will be weighted average. Next week, will be FIFO. Although we probably will start with a weighted average just to kind of warm up and then go to the FIFO and kind of compare and contrast. And the last day for process costing, we will look at spoilage, or I think is it wastage or spoilage or scrap? Because a question came in 2014 with that, and that didn't seem to be on the syllabus, and it caused quite a bit of an uproar. So, but we know CAPE does these ridiculous things. We know even in 2022 they brought something that was not on the syllabus. It had been removed from the syllabus, and it was a module 2 topic, and they brought it in the module 3 question. So we know that they do ridiculous things from time to time. All right. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So let's go to step 1, right? So to do this, we are going, oh wait, where's my PDF? Right, we have to go back to module 2, process costing, PDF, right? Right, so we're going to be doing this one. Yeah, so it says PPQ 2019 version, and just before I started the streams, we took a look and we saw that there were no questions after 2019 for process costing. Right, now this one is the 2006 question, so it's quite a bit, it's like 19 years old. So as older than some of you all. All right. Okay, so we're going to take a look, I'll read through the question, right? So the cutting department at Kingstown Industries, and I did send this in the chat. Let me make sure I sent it in the chat, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. Yeah. So, sorry, yeah. So Kingstown Industries uses a process costing system to record the cost of processing its products. Cool. Currently, only the custom computerized scoreboard is made in this department. All right. In arriving at the conversion cost, the company adds the overhead cost calculated at 2 above, whatever that was, to the direct labor cost incurred in the department. So, not sure that that's relevant right now. The cutting department provided the following information relating to the custom computerized scoreboard for the current period. So work in process start of period is 1,500 units, 35% complete. So we have direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. And if we add up these 3 costs, so 8 plus 12, yeah, we get this, right? 130.16. Right, and then the cost incurred in the current period, so direct materials 270, direct labor 120, factory overhead is 418.5. Right, so I added that in because I don't know if you could see it does look, actually no, you probably can't see it. It does look a little different, slightly different. I actually had to add that in, right? I had to add it in because it wasn't given, right? It was part of the previous part of the question, right? Anyhow, so it says units started in the current period 4,800. And ending work in process, 30% completed, 1,000, right? So it says the cutting department uses the weighted average process costing method, and all direct materials are added at the beginning of production. So remember I said we have a simplifying assumption about all, where is it? Where did it go? Yeah, all direct materials are added at the start of the process, right? So usually the question will say that outright. They will not have any doubt as to whether that is the case in the question or not. All right. While conversion activity occurs uniformly throughout the production process. So this paragraph here is something you have to kind of look for in every question to make sure that the assumptions that we are going to use to do most, if not all of our questions, apply to the question you have to do, right? So it says prepare process costing worksheet. So you could call it a process costing worksheet or a production cost report for the cutting department of Kingstown Industries for the current period using the weighted average process costing method. All right, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to send a picture of this in the chat. And I know I could do a screenshot and send it. I guess I'm stuck in my ways. Feeling like an old foodie. But I can still send decent pics. Anyhow, right, at least I believe I can send decent pics. Crop that, put that there, right, sorry. So, just in case anybody, sorry, Cassidy. I guess it's a different Cassidy. Did you post answers for May, June 2024 POA? No, not yet, but I have them. I do plan to actually start back recording videos in February. So you will have them, those answers for January 2024, May 2024, and Jan 2025 before any Form 5 mock exams start. All right, but you could always DM me if you have any questions or need any help. Okay, right, so back to my class now, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, CAPE class, right? When you're approaching a process costing question, like I said, you have 5 steps. The first of which is you have to account for physical units. Now, even though you have to do that, step by step. You still need to read through the question and pick out these things, right? Now, at the start here, let me see. Can I highlight stuff here? Right. So, okay, sorry. Yeah, okay, right. So, work in process at the start of the period is 1,500 units. Okay, cool. Now, it says 35% complete. Now, in the very first step, we are not interested in any percentage complete. All we want is the physical units, as in the raw number of units. Doesn't matter if it's work in process. Sorry, it doesn't matter what percent complete. If it's 35, 25, 150, 75, 62.9, it don't matter. All we want is the raw number of units, right? So we have work in process, start of period, 1,500. Now you have a bunch of cost information in the middle here, right? Right below that, we have more physical units. Sorry, give me 1 sec. Let's see what's making this hullabaloo. Oh, there is a panel van. Yo. Yeah, sorry, that's just a vehicle outside. But my brother and my father seem to know who it is. Right. So this is also another important piece of information, right? So units started in the current period is 4,800, and the ending work in process is, sorry, 1,000. Okay, so check it. This is how we're going to do this. So let's put that to the top there. Put this below here, right? We are actually going to split the screen on the top here so we could see the information a bit more easily. Right. So in step 1, right, which is physical units, right? So yeah, you had a Kingstown Industries process cost and worksheet for the period ended whenever, don't matter right now. So normally people they literally head up physical units. I just found it would have been too much to write. I just put units. So we start with the work in process at start. So how many units were brought in from before? How many units already in existence? 1,500. And then we look at how many units were started. So units started, right, in the current period, right? Or you could even put units started into production, right? It doesn't matter specifically what you label it once you have it there, right? Okay, cool. So that's 4,800, right? So you had 1,500 units at start. You put in 4,800 more. So now you have a total of 6,300 units in production. And this is units to be accounted for, right? So you have to account for 6,300 units. So what do we account for? So remember, if you think back to your income statement, remember in your income statement, you have opening stock plus purchases. And that gives you your cost of goods available or number of units available. And from that, you're either going to have some are going to be sold and some are going to not be sold. So you're going to have your goods available are either going to end up in sales, as in your cost of sales, or your closing stock, right? So your opening stock plus purchases is equal to your closing stock plus your sales, right? So it's the same thing here. Your opening stock plus your, well, I don't want to call it purchases, right? But just, so opening stock plus new units must be equal to the closing stock plus the finished units, right? So the units completed, sorry, Beavis, units completed plus the work in process at end, right? Now, we are told outright that the ending work in process is how many units? 1,000. So we know that for sure. Right? And we also know the units accounted for should be 6,300. So we kind of have to work backwards to find out, well, how many units were completed, right? So we could do a simple subtraction. 63 minus 1 will give us 5,300, right? So 6,300 minus 1,000 gives us back 53, right? You could even show it here if you want. 6,300 minus the 1,000, right? So this number of units, right, minus the number at n gives us the number completed, right? So you can show the little working in the brackets, but you don't have to, right? And that's part 1, right? That is part 1. That is step 1. That is all I'm going to write for step 1, and I'm going to send this in the chat. right? I'll send it in the chat. We'll do a quick review, and then we'll go on to step 2. Right? And of course, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. It's not a problem. That's why we're here. Happy to answer your questions, or at least attempt to. I hope I can. Right? Right. So once again, let's put that back down here. No, behave yourself. Right. So come back down here. Good, good. Right. So again, the question tells us that they started with 1,500 units in process at the start of the period. Cool. They then started an additional 4,800. So that's your first section, right? They say, okay, look, we have this in process at start, and we started this many in the current period. So we currently have 6,300 units in the production line, in the assembly, whatever, right? In the production process, right? At the end, we have 1,000 units still in process. So out of these 6,300, you still have 1,000 left in process, which means the difference or the remainder is what you completed. And when you add what you completed to what was incomplete, you should get back the same figure from on top here. All right, so my students, if you guys are good with that, just kindly give me a quick G in the chat. Right? If you need me to re-explain again, it's not a problem. Give me an R, right? And or if you have a specific question, you can let me know specifically what it is you want to re-explain. All right, cool. So I have 11 out of about 14 people there. Right? Now, if you're trying to rush to copy it down, again, you could let me know. I could give you a minute or two to finish do that. But like I said, I'll be sending pics as we go along, and you'll get the PDF after, right? But of course, I would advise you to do what works best for you. If you learn by copying down, then by all means, right? Again, I'll maximize it so you can see what we have so far, right? And again, I'll build on it, right? So what I would advise you to do if you're copying it down, don't do what I'm doing as in like write it over every time. I am going to write it over every time, all right? I'm actually going to build it out in a manner like this, all right? So that way, instead of when you go to review, you're not just looking at a big, large page with all the steps. You could review step by step how we added one piece at a time, all right? Okay, cool. All right, so that's that. So that's step 1. Now, based on the notes, step 2 says to calculate equivalent units. Right. Now, let me just say this before I show how I lay out the next step. There's no one right or correct way to prepare a process costing worksheet. There's no set format. There's no mandatory or obligatory layout that you have to use. There are different ones. Usually teachers teach what they learned and what they like, and that differs because sometimes teachers will modify the formats because that is allowable, and then they'll teach what they find is a bit more, well, to their liking, right? And of course, they will penalize you for not doing what they want you to do, right? So all I will say is that if you like mine and you learn mine, it will be perfectly acceptable for CAPE, which is ultimately what you're going to. If you have to do something different for your teacher, well, you're going to have to do that for your teacher, all right? But it might also be good to be flexible in terms of your presentation because you never know. You might find a different one that is actually easier, all right? Right, okay, so let's go to step 2 now. So step 2 in the process says to calculate the equivalent units, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this up here. All right, because what we need is the number of physical units and the percentage complete, right? Now, we're seeing 2 percentages labeled out, right? You're seeing a 35% on top here for work in process at start, and you're seeing a 30% here for completed. Now, I'll tell you outright, the only one that is relevant when you're doing the weighted average method is the ending work in process. There's an assumption under the weighted average method in that the work in process at start, right, is lumped in with the units started, right? So, and what we do is we ignore any previous work done on it, and we assume all work is done in the current period, right? So let me show you. If I show you what I mean by that, it might make a little more sense. I know it doesn't sound like it's logical or like it makes sense based on what I said just now. Hold on, just now. What? Do I have an extra line? I do have an extra line. I don't know why. No, be yourself. Right. Oh. Hey, stop it. Right. So that's just gonna make copying and pasting a little easier. Right. So all I'm doing in step 2, I'm copying and pasting. So I'm taking step 1, right, and I'm adding this little piece across here. So I'm kind of shifting across to the right, and I have like a column for materials and a column for conversion. Right? So remember, materials costs are the cost of the materials, and the conversion cost is direct labor plus overhead. Right. Now we're not even worrying with costs, right? As you can see, I have nothing with costs on the top here, right? Now, what I'm trying to do is calculate the equivalent, the number of equivalent units in each of these categories, right? Now, I calculate equivalent units, as we saw across here, by multiplying the number of units by the percentage of completion. Now, with units completed, if it's complete, the percentage completion is obviously 100%. Right? Now, I like to put my percentages here based on how I have my formulas set out. You don't have to put your percentages there. Right? You don't even have to show the percentages, although I would recommend showing percentages. Right? Some people even show the working in a little bracket. But again, when you start to do process costing worksheets, you will get an idea about how you prefer to lay out your work and what you prefer to show and not show. All right? Now, we have to separate the equivalent units into materials and conversion, right? And I'll tell you why shortly. Now, for the units completed, it doesn't matter because they're both, once it's completed, it's 100% done. It's complete with respect to materials and conversion. But what we do is we multiply this by the percentage. All right? Hold on, sorry. Yeah. And again, for the conversion, we multiply this by the percentage. Right? So it's no surprise that they both say 5,300 because for completed units, they're 100% complete with respect to materials and conversion. So you have 5,300 units in both columns, right? Now, your work in process at end. I'm going to go back up here. And I'm going to draw your attention, please, to this paragraph here. Right? So it says that, right. No. This piece, right? All, stop it, right. I didn't think highlighting a sentence could be the hardest thing I had to do in class. All right, so all direct materials are added at the beginning of production. All direct materials are added at the beginning of production. What is the implication of that for our equivalent units calculation? The word all implies what percent? 100. So what it means is that with respect to materials, even though this is still in process, right? This work in process at end is still in process, even though it is still in process, because of the assumption that all direct materials are added at the beginning of production, we understand that the work in process at end, actually all units, are automatically 100% complete with respect to materials, right? With conversion, that's where this 30% comes into play, right? So the conversion, right, that's the one that you had to watch out for. Right? That's the one that would probably not be the 100%, right? And you're going to multiply 1,000, sorry, by 30% and get 300. Now we simply add to get the total for materials, so 6,300 equivalent units of materials, equivalent units with respect to materials, and 5,600 equivalent units with respect to conversion. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out slightly and I'm going to take a picture of this screen. And then I'm going to do a recap and we're going to go on to step 3. And of course, if you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask them. right? Princess Lakeisha Makeda. No, I think what you might be talking about is regular stock valuation for CSEC POA, like LIFO, FIFO, AFCO. This is a different topic entirely called process costing, and the concept of weighted average has to do with just the flow of the materials. So, and the cost as well, but it's not in the same exact way as in regular stock valuation. All right. So if you're on a CSEC track, this is not CSEC. This is SCAPE. All right. Okay. Cool. All right. So my Google Meet people, if you guys would be kind enough to give me a G if you're good with step 2, which is just, well, this piece here. Right? Of course, if you have any questions, you may just re-explain anything one more time, which I said I was going to do. Right. So yeah, sorry about that. So after you account for your physical units, you have to calculate equivalent units. All that entails is multiplying the physical units by the percentage completion with respect to materials and conversion. For your units completed, that's a pretty easy task because completed implies that they're all 100% complete. So you're basically going to get 5,300 here and here. Because if you multiply 5,300 by 100%, you get back 5,300, right? The work in process at end will have be slightly more involved because it's 30% complete, right? But there's an assumption that all direct materials are added at the beginning of production, which again, you will see in most questions, the vast majority of them, right? So if it's 100% complete with respect to materials, because all materials are added at the beginning of production, you have 100% with respect to materials. And the 30% that they're talking about here is only really with conversion. And that's actually where the other sentence comes into play. While conversion activity, right, occurs uniformly. So what that means is as each step goes by, you incur conversion in proportion. What I mean by that, if there were 2 steps, as each step goes by, each step is an equal 50% of conversion, if it's just 2 steps. If it was 3 steps, they each incur 1/3 of the conversion costs through each step. If it was 4 steps, you'd incur 25% of conversion costs in each step, right? So uniformly means they incur the same proportion through each step in the process. Okay, all right. All right, so I got 7 out of 14, so that's half of yours. So the next half, right, if it is you're not following, if I lost you, you had to let me know. I don't want to go on and leave people in the dust, all right, because that's not a nice thing to do. Right. Okay, so I'm gonna go here now. Right, I'm gonna go here, put that there. Right. So step 3. So what is step 3? Identify the costs to be accounted for. Okay, cool. So this is also a kind of easy-ish part, right? So let me explain why. So we're gonna scroll down a little bit, right? Now these columns for materials and conversion will kind of persist through the next couple of sections. So it'll persist in step 2, 3, and 4, right? What I mean by that is that these headings will kind of go right down to just about here. And I'll show you, right? Now, the costs we have to account for are materials and conversion, yes, but we have to account for them in beginning working process, right? Beginning working process, as well as the current period's cost, right? Sorry. So the cost we have to account for will come from the work in process at start and the current period's costs, right? Now, for materials, right? So work in process, the materials cost is 76.5. So we could put that here, 76,500. And the conversion cost is the sum of the direct labor and the factory overhead. 12,400 plus 42,700. Sorry, not equals. What? Leave yourself. Oh, wow. I'm pressing the wrong button on the left side. Okay, cool. So that's 53,1, 55,1. Wow. Okay, cool. And then this here will simply be the sum of the materials and the conversion, right? So again, the materials cost 76.5. Conversion is direct labor plus factory overhead. Right? So 12 and 42 is 54 plus an extra 11, so that's 55.1, right? And again, materials, conversion, so the column headers persist even into the next section, right? And then the current period's cost. So current costs incurred in the current period. Sorry, costs incurred in the current period. So direct material. Come on, man, don't do that. Pay yourself. Yeah. So materials is 270, and the conversion is equal to 120 plus 418 500. So that's what, 538.5. Yeah. And then you add those two together to get 808,500. And then you add that to get 940. And that's the costs to be accounted for. Right? And yes, you actually do have to, hold on, wait, do I do that here? Okay. Yeah, you could show them here. Right. Right, so I'm gonna just take a picture and then I'm gonna recap. Right, and I'll highlight this part here because that's the new part, right? I didn't do that before with section 2. Sorry about that. All right. It's step 2, sorry, not section 2. I guess I could call it section 2. There we are. Daniela, morning. Yeah, right. So again, just to kind of recap what I did there was in step 3, I have the cost, what do you call it? Cost to be accounted for. So identify cost to be accounted for, right? So I have costs for both materials and conversion to identify for the work in process at start and for the current period, all right? So for the work in process at start, direct materials is 76.5. That's where I got this. And again, like I said, the headings here persist down. And then for the conversion costs for work in process is the sum of direct labor and overhead. So that's 12.4 plus 42.7, and that's 55.1. Right. Now for the costs incurred in the current period, the direct materials is a straight 270. So you put that here, and then you have your direct labor and factory overhead total to this, right? And then we add going right to left to get each of these subtotals here, which we then add together to get the grand total, right? And of course, you could total down as well to get materials and conversion subtotals. And if you add going across as well, you're supposed to get 940, 100. So you have cross checks built into this section too, right? Okay, so that's step 3. So we only have 2 more steps to go. The next step is actually a very short step. All right, so let me actually maximize this for a second. I'm just gonna copy everything, go across here, and put it back. Right, okay. So this 4th and penultimate step is calculating the cost per equivalent unit. So this is where our formula, which we said was kind of rendered null and void, comes into play. You're going to take your costs and divide by the number of equivalent units in each section, or in each classification, right? So what do I mean by that? Right. So you have equivalent units on top of here for materials and conversion. We also have the total materials cost and the total conversion cost. So what we are going to do now is simply divide. What are we dividing by? We are dividing the costs to be accounted for materials and conversion by the number of equivalent units from the previous section, 6,300 and 5,600. Okay, right? And when we divide, we get $55 and $106 respectively, right? So this is the costs per equivalent units. Cost per equivalent. And that's just this piece here, right? So I'm going to maximize this, take a picture and send, and then I'll check. And so I know I didn't ask for G's for section 3, so I'll ask for section 3 and 4. I know that's not a good idea. I'm supposed to separate what I'm asking about so I don't cause confusion or make it more difficult to explain if anybody has any questions. But we could figure it out. I think we have that capability. I need to wipe my lens. I find the image looking a little dim. Okay, right. So so we just did 2 sets of things here, right? we compiled the cost to be accounted for, and then we calculated the cost per equivalent unit, right? So Google Meet, if you guys are good with those two steps there, just give them a quick G in the chat. If you need me to re-explain either or both of them or any particular aspect, that's not a problem, right? I'm happy to do so if you need me to, okay? So like I said, as you can see, we have 4 steps so far, right? And to be honest, these don't seem too bad, right? But of course, when you're in it and you're now starting it, and it's the first couple of times you're trying, it feels like a lot. I remember how I felt doing this, especially when how they showed it to us was again just the full format right out the bat. So like how some of y'all feel when when y'all were introduced to income statements or balance sheets in Form 4, and they gave you the whole enchilada right off the bat, and they even break it up into pieces or explain the pieces and do step by step. It's just take that and learn it. That is what it's do. All right, cool. Anyhow, right, okay. So I have one more step, the final step, which tends to be the most involved, right? Now, I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm just saying that to let you know what's going to happen, right? Now we have the cost assignment. Now, what does that mean? So remember, so it means we have to assign costs. Okay, what costs are we assigning, and to what are we assigning those costs? Okay, no problem. So remember, we have the physical units, and they were broken up into the completed units and work in process. So what we are assigning the cost to would be these units here, right? The completed units for materials and conversion, and the work in process at end for also materials and conversion. Okay, so give me one sec. Right. Okay, so this part down here, I kind of came up with my own format. Sorry, give me a sec. What? Okay, cool. Right. So, like I was saying, and again, I'm not saying it to scare you or freak you out or anything like that. I just have my own way of doing it. If you've done this topic already and you have a way you do it to which you are accustomed, and what I'm showing you isn't, yeah, like it, then you don't have to do it that way, right? If you haven't done this topic before and you try it this way and you like it, cool. If you don't like it, I have other formats I could send after. All right. And I could also send you replays from those years if you need to see how it goes, right? Okay, I must stop talking. So now we have the cost assignment, right? So cost assign, sorry. Right, cool. Right, so hold on. Just now. Am I? Oh, no. Right, sorry. I'm not in step 5. I'll go to step 5. But I do have to copy everything from steps 1 to 4 to go across. Right, and I'm gonna come out about 1/7. 1/7, they should be fine. All right, because I have to show that and that. Yeah, okay, cool. So I think we should be okay. Right, so the cost assignment. So we are assigning the costs. So these costs have to be assigned to these things, right? And they have to be assigned based on materials and conversion. Cool. So let's start with what I think is the easier of the 2 batches, which is the units completed, right? So units completed, right? So why do I think this is the easier of the 2 batches? Because I'll show you, right? So again, these headings persist down as well, even into this last section. So for materials, so the cost per equivalent unit is 55. The number of equivalent units for materials, so again, follow me on this, right? So we're in the materials column for units completed, right? So that had to be, that's the 5,300, right? So 5,300. and I multiply going down. Sorry, I multiply this by that. Right, so I know it's kind of weird to see things listed across and then all of a sudden you have something below them, but just go with me for now, right? And again, if you want to switch up your format and shift stuff around so it makes better sense to you, by all means, right? So this is the cost per equivalent unit for materials, and this is the number of equivalent units of materials in the units completed, right? Now for conversion, the conversion cost per unit is 106. The number of equivalent units for conversion for units completed is 5,300. See, units completed, conversion, right? Same 5,300. Boom. Right, and then we simply multiply 106 by 5,300 is 561.8. And then we simply add those two things together. So 291.5 plus 561.8. So just like how we added going across, like this and like this, right? Same thing here. We add going across, right? But of course now we have to calculate. All right. Now, the second batch we have to do is for the work in process at end, and it's more of the same. What do I mean by that? Right. So look, we still have to, sorry. So we have to find materials and conversion, right? The cost per equivalent unit for materials is the same 55 as on top of here, right? This cost per equivalent unit is for all of the equivalent units for materials, right? It doesn't matter if it's completed or work in process. That is the cost for equivalent units for materials, right? Now the number of units here is this, and the cost therefore is the product, right? So we're going to take the 55 and multiply by 1,000. And for the conversion, right, so the cost is the same 106, and the equivalent units for conversion for the closing work in process is this. All right, boom. All right, and now we have to just multiply these two things together and get 31. Now we're going to add going across. All right, so it's going to copy and paste that here, and we're going to then finally add these two items here. And look at that, right? So this is total costs accounted for, right? This and this. Those are equal, right? And that's the end of the statement. So what we've done in the whole statement, right? Ultimately, what it all boiled down to was this cost assignment, finding out what's the cost for the units completed and the cost for the work in process at end. To do so, we need materials and we need conversion for each of these sections here, right? We take the cost per equivalent unit and multiply by the number of equivalent units for both materials and conversion for the completed units and the work in process at end, right? Then for each of these subsections, you add going across to get the subtotal for each of the subsections there. Sorry. Right, and then you add those two, and that should tie back to this, right? Now, just a heads up, in some questions, what's going to happen when you find this piece here, you're going to have to round off, and in rounding off, it's going to cause a difference here between here and here, right? Usually, it's not material, right? Usually, it's some dollars. Sometimes it's 20 something, sometimes it's 100 and something, sometimes it's 800. And it really don't make a difference, right? So, because like, hey, if you have $940,000, right, is $100 going to make a difference? Is $500 going to make a difference, a material difference that's going to affect the decision? Not really, right? Okay, hold on. So let me, after send a picture, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a picture of, hold on, right? So let me put that as unread. Right, and then keep now. Right, so I have, let me see. Right, so that's the question. That's step one. That's step two. Right, and it keeps getting progressively smaller every time. So let me send this step. This is step 4, right? So I'm gonna send it by itself. and we're going to send it all together. All right, and then I'll do a quick recap for the road, and then you're going to get one to try, right? Now, of course, I'm not going to just fling you in the deep water and let you try and swim, right? We're going to do it step by step, piece by piece. Okay, so let me zoom back into 170. Yeah, right. So, starting from top, we need the number of units in work in process and the unit started, right? And that's the raw physical units. And then we have to switch it up and put them in different sections now for completed units and incomplete. And these two are supposed to add back to this. And what you're going to have to do sometimes is use this figure in conjunction with this figure to find out the completed, right? So that's section 1. Section 2 now we have to convert to equivalent unit. Reish al Ghul boy, going on. Right, so that involves multiplying the physical units by percentage complete. For the units complete, it's quite easy because once it's complete, it's 100% complete for both materials and conversion. So you just multiply going straight across. So right, you multiply by the percentages going across. The work in process at n is also going to be 100% complete with respect to materials because usually the assumption in the question is that all materials are added at the start of the process. If they are not, they will tell you and they'll give you a percentage that you can use here, right? But normally it's 100. Now, thereafter, we have to find the percentage complete with respect to conversion for ending work in process. And usually it's given to you outright, right? Most times it's a percentage, occasionally it's a fraction, right? Now, after we do that, we have to identify the costs to be accounted for. Now, usually they'll give it to us, and we split it up again into work in process at start and the current period cost. So it's kind of mirroring this, right? Work in process at start and the current period, right? So that's going to be here, right? You're going to split it up into materials and conversion. And again, they should give it to you outright or give you somewhere to find it. It's not usually very difficult, right? In terms of identifying those things. You also need that information for the current period's cost, right? Now, you're going to add going across to get these subtotals and a grand total here. You can also add going down to get these subtotals, which you can add across to the grand total. After you do that, you're going to take these same subtotals you got and divide by the number of equivalent units for both materials and conversion to get the cost per equivalent unit. And then after that is the final step, right? Like I said, it is the most involved, but as you saw, it's not like super difficult. We simply are trying to find the cost. So just like how we started off with work in process and the current period here and here, we have to switch that now to units completed and work in process at end here and here, right? So you're going to take your cost for equivalent units for materials and for conversion, and you're going to multiply by the equivalent units for materials and conversion for units completed and for work in process at end. And all of that information we have from before. We're just putting it together in the final section down here. All right, and after you find your little figures down here, add going across for units completed and for work in process at end, and then you add going down. And this should be equal to that. If it's not, it's probably because you had to round off here, which will happen in some questions, and it's going to cause a little bit of difference. Nothing, it should not cause anything significant. If it's a significant difference, something went wrong somewhere. All right. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, now is a good time to ask, right? What I am going to do is I'm going to put up the question I want you all, that we are going to try together, all right? But I'm going to give you all a little more, what's the word? Autonomy? I'm going to let you all try first, right? But we're going to do it piece by piece. All right, so this is 2009. So again, this PDF was sent in the chat just at the start of class or a little after the start of class. So you should have access to it in the WhatsApp chat, right? I will send a picture on WhatsApp shortly. So let me do such. I will take a read. Oh wait, I didn't send that one just now. Wow, okay. All right, so the objective is actually to get you 2 questions. I don't know that we'll be able to, but we definitely will at least try. Yeah, I'll leave the year visible. All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, again, I find it's a little dim. I don't know if it's the light in the room or whatever. Oh, did I get the Jan 2025? Was that the CSEC POA? Who's that? Who's asking about that there? Or just the comma? The- what was that? I don't know. All right. Yeah, I did. I got it. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to do the solution, but I'm hoping to do that within the coming weeks. So I'm going to try to put out the Jan 2024, May 2024, and Jan 2025 solutions in March, February actually. Okay, so keep people, I'm back with you now. So let's take a read. So St. Michael Company manufactures a product that requires inputs from several departments prior to completion. The mixing department is the first department in the production process. On completion of the mixing process, the units are transferred to the molding department, right? So it says here the following information is available on work in the mixing department for June 2008. Okay. So we have work in process at start, right? Work in process June 1, so 20,000 units, that's physical, and then percentage completion, right? So 100% conversion, 75. Now, these percentages don't really matter because, like I said, for work in process at start, we kind of lump that in with the unit started, and these percentages don't matter. What really matters is just the percentage completion at end. All right, so you could ignore these for now. That if we did 5-4, that would come into play, but we're not dealing with 5-4 yet. So sorry, right? Then we have started into production 180. Okay, then we have completed and transferred out 160 and work in process at the end of June 40, and they give us the percentages complete. Now, check this. If you take your work in process at start and you add your unit started, 20 and 180 will give us 200. If now we compare these two, the completed and the incomplete, 160 and 40, we again get 200. So this question was nice enough to not have us have to calculate the number of units completed, all right? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to do step 1, all right? So let's put this on top, put this below, all right? Let's zoom out a little bit then. Right. Right, so what you're doing for me is you're doing basically this item here, right, with these figures on top of here. Okay, so I'll give you 2-3 minutes, right? You could head up, what is, boy, St. Michael Company process costing worksheet for June 2008. Hold on. Right. Okay, I know what to do. Give me 1 sec. Right. So this is the part here you're focusing on, right? So you could, like I say, you could copy it straight in terms of the labels, and you plug in the figures in the appropriate places. minutes again, and then I'm going to start just plugging any stuff there, right? Okay, so the working process at start was 20,000 units. The units started in the current period, that's 180. Right, so of course we're going to total at 200 there. And if we take the 160 and the 40, sorry, that's 400, my bad. Again, we're going to get 200 there. Okay, cool. Now, okay, so if we go with that, cool. If not, let me know. And don't forget, you could always send me pics of your work on WhatsApp. So what we're going to do now is we are going to do the equivalent units section. Right, so just right here. Right, so of course, yeah, so we are going to need kind of two things, right? So again, for materials and conversion, you need to do a set, well, like a column each, I guess you could say, right? And the percentage completion, so I like to put it here. Again, you don't have to put it there. You could put it there, you could put it elsewhere, but I normally put it there, okay? So for units completed, we know it's 100% complete, right? And for work in process at end, for materials, we know it's 100% because they tell us that, yeah, okay. Well, we could safely assume all materials are added at the start of the process. Like I said, it's a standing assumption, and the only way we ever doubt it is if they tell us outright, right? And then the conversion cost for work in process at end is 25%, right? So again, all you're doing is you're multiplying the physical units by the percentages for each of these pieces here, and then you're adding going down, right? So I'll give you a couple minutes again for that. Let me just check outside of here. I hear my dogs barking. Yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, Rayshon, what's up? Right, so I'll give you a minute or so again. If you need more time, you could let me know. Because you know, it's take time to put things together and plug things up in the calculator and these things, you know. Wow, that was kind of crazy. What? Right, so the question is, how did I not use 75% for convert? Right, so because we're using the the weighted average cost flow assumption now, right? So we're using the weighted average cost flow assumption. So one of the assumptions, or standing assumptions with the weighted average, is that the work in process at start is lumped together with the unit started in production, and all work is assumed to be done in the current period. I know it sounds kind of weird, and the other method, the first in, first out, the FIFO method, actually will use the percentage of work done on the beginning working process. So when I do that next week, you're going to see like an extra section here and in the very last section too, right? So that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. Okay, right. Let me put in my figures now, right? Okay, so of course, we're going to multiply this by that. We're going to lock that cell. And then the same 160. Okay, no, so. Right. Yeah, same 160 by 100% here. Right, now. Yeah. So then it's 40 by 100%. So we're going to do this. Yeah, so 40% by 40,000 by 100%, sorry, is 40,000. 40,000 by 25% is 10,000. And when we add going down, we get 200,000 equivalent units there and 170 there. Okay, so after the first two steps, can I just get a G to see if you guys are good up to that point, please and thanks. All right, if you need me to re-explain anything, if you got different figures and not sure why, let me know. We could discuss it. It's not a problem. I want to make sure you're where we at. Cool. Yeah, the colors. Yeah, I wanted the colors to kind of make things pop because they're gonna continue down, so you could actually visually link certain things together. All right. So yes, thank you. Okay. Right. So let's go down to the next section. I'm gonna zoom out. Do I need to zoom out? No, I think I'm fine with that. Right. Okay. So for the costs, we're gonna have the cost for the work in process at start and the cost for the current period's costs, right? So we need the materials, so we're gonna have to scroll down a little bit. Right, so they've given everything to us, right? They've laid it out immaculately, right? So all you're gonna do, you're gonna take the 25.2 and the 24.8, put them here and here, and of course you're gonna add going this way to get that subtotal. And same thing for the cost added during June, right? You're going to take those two costs, the 334.8, put it here for materials, 238.7, put it here for conversion, and add going across, right? Then you're going to add up going down in each of those columns there, right? So again, I'll give you a couple of minutes to deal with that, and then we will deal with the cost per equivalent units. Right, let's put them in. Cool. So, sorry, 25,200 sorry, no, 800, right? So that's equal to this plus dot, right? And we have 334, 800 here, and then 238, 700 there. Copy that going down, right? 570, 273, right? Good. 49, right? Add that together. Right, so this is total cost to be accounted for. And we're just going to add each of those. Nice figure, boys. 360 and 263. Okay, cool. Right, so that was step 3. Now, step 4 is we have to calculate the cost per equivalent unit. And all that means is that we are going to divide here by the equivalent units we found above. So here, we're going to take the 200, bring it down here and divide. Here, we'll take the 170, bring it down here and divide. Right? And that's going to give us the cost per equivalent unit. Okay, cool. So I'll give you a minute or so to organize that, and then we'll hit the last section, and then we might be done for the day. So even though we only have gotten through one example, one question, right? I can give you one to do as an assignment if you want, but I probably will use it as the start question next week. So we could do that. And I have more questions to give if anybody wants, you know. That is no problem. All right. Hey, Andrew, what's going on? Hey, Vedika, you come back. I don't think the 11 of you all know. All right. I guess people had to go. Maybe I'm just that boring. Who knows? Combination of the things. Right. Okay, cool. Come back here. All right, cool. Oops. Reference, Christopher, reference. All right, so that's our first one there. Does that look good? No, let's put it back. All right, so we got 180 and 155. Okay. Sorry if I rushed that piece there. I lost track of time. So oh wait, I'll do it now. All right. So I'll leave that there for a couple of seconds if anybody's still copying that. Now, the last piece we have to do, we could actually just we can maximize this whole thing. All right. So we have to now assign the costs to the units completed and the work in process at end. All right. And you can see the colors kind of tying back to some things there. So again, what we're doing is we're going to take what we just found, right, the cost per equivalent unit, and multiply it by the equivalent units for each of these sections here and here. When you multiply it, you're going to get figures in these little blocks here. And just like when you added the costs going across on top of here, you're going to add those costs going across down here and here. And then same thing, after you add going across, you add going down, and that figure should tie back to this piece here. All right, so I'll give you a few minutes to sort that out, and then we'll go from there. All right. So yeah, Cassidy, you see the colors kind of tying back. Hopefully they have enough contrast so that you can make out the different figures to go different places. Ooh, I got something to correct. How lovely. I got colors too, boy. Nice. Exactly. I don't know how I used to study from my notes back in the day with just either black or just blue. You know, now I want to call it a journaling practice, but I was basically just reading and making notes from books. And do I have any examples here, boy? So I had about 6 colored pens, right? And I would start off with black at the top. Then I would do pink, green, blue, orange, purple, and then go back to, I think, red, and then finish off again with black. And each one was for like a short paragraph. So it would be like a regular a letter size page, a line down the middle. So I have two columns, and each column had a header for what was on that page. And I would try to make sure like each chapter I was able to summarize in those 5 or 6 paragraphs with a header in black, and at the bottom like a summary in black as well. So it somehow works better for me. So just one second, I've seen a question here. Naldo, how I got 5735? Oh, I added these 2 figures going across Naldo. Yeah, sorry, and also your question. Yeah, Joshua, yeah, so the colors have their place. Now, some people, like when I was in school as a student, the colors didn't work for me. I had like one highlighter color, which was yellow, and I didn't even like that too much. And my pen color was blue. I don't know why, but now I could use the blue in like short paragraphs, but not for the whole thing. If I have to write copious notes, it has to be black. I could live with the black in certain things, and other things I can't. I don't like, yeah.
I think like when I encounter like switching like making all uniform into one thing, paragraphs, not take so much time. I would just when I feel like it, just pick up a different color pen
Yeah,
and just write it.
yeah, yeah,
Some it works.
yeah.
I don't know.
I think it, yeah. I think visually, like I said, it breaks the visual monotony, and it makes it for some people a little more appealing. But you know what I find they've been doing recently? I find like they've been like every interesting thing like that. They say it's some symptom of ADHD or something, or you're neurodivergent or neuroatypical. I'm like, okay. I mean, okay, cool, no problem. It might explain some quirks in my personality or some issues I have. I don't know, but all right. Do we need a label? Can we just fix what we have?
I find some people just do it just because the guideline.
Yeah. Because sometimes they like things to be a certain way. You know? Like how they say, like, for example, like if people have to straighten something on a shelf or whatever, they have OCD. I'm like, yeah, but when I was growing up, if things weren't fixed a particular way, your parents were like, why is that?
Just want to look neat.
Exactly, it want to look a particular way, and some things just don't look neat in particular ways. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I don't know. You ever watch a show called Big Bang Theory?
Oh,
Of course, I must say, of course, boy, that's a partner of mine there. So of course, so Sheldon had to complete things, right? So his then girlfriend, what she did was like she was playing something on a keyboard. I think it was the national anthem of America, and she stopped before she hit the last note, and he was like, "I'm fine." And like she did a whole host of things, like a whole couple hours she went through and did a lot of stuff and left it incomplete. And then after she left, he was like, "I'm fine." After she left, he went and do everything and finished everything off. I'm like, yeah, I'd probably be the same way too. Yo. All right. Sorry.
I mean, I try to see something on top order.
Mhm.
It's normal.
Yeah. Things supposed to be a particular way, and sometimes you can leave it, sometimes you can't. You know, but sometimes they're just too out of order to leave. You know, so
I have a question though.
yeah, go ahead.
When I know you said that the total costs to be accounted for, like the one in the cost section, one in the cost assignments.
Right.
I know it could not line up because around it. But what do you do on
The
on
exam?
statement?
Right.
Do
So
you match it or put the difference?
right. So what you could do is you could actually put whatever your calculated figure is. So let's say, for example, you got 623, 490 something or 470 something. You could put a note like right here and you could say difference due to rounding. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, you could put back the exact figure, right? You just have to make sure the maths lines up, right? The interesting thing about Excel here is that it has 15 decimal places unseen. So it actually uses those things. So I actually usually get back the exact thing, unless I round it off. Anyhow, I'll watch any time. Let me plug in these figures quick, right? Okay. So we have 180 here. We have 160 here. And then this is equal to 180 by 160. Hey, I'll multiply sign, boy. All right. Across here, I have the 155, and I have 160 as well. And then multiply, give me 248. Right. So now I have to add those two things. No. This plus this. Right. 536. Cool. And then down here for the work in process at N, I have the 180, and I have the 40 for materials, and then the same 155 and the 10,000 on top of here for conversion. All right, and then copy and paste that down. Adding those two together will give me that. Aha, right. And then if I add those two things, what do I get? 623.5, right? So total costs accounted for. All right. Okay. Sorry, wait. Just now, I was correcting something from Tony. Oh. Yeah. Okay, good work. Yeah, Tony, sorry. I had ticks and stuff, and I got distracted, sorry. But yes, good work. That's correct. Very good. Good job. All right. Okay, so folks, Aliyah, right. So do you use the 4 decimal place method to get it exact, or I just use Excel? If you're talking about when you actually write it out, you can keep the values in your calculator, right? Whatever is the exact value, but you could show rounded figures here. Of course, because it's dollars and cents, you'd show up to 2 decimal places. I wouldn't show more than 2 in your statement. But you can keep the exact values in your calculator, and when you plug them in, right, you will get figures, and then ultimately you should get the exact thing tying back here, right? If you, for whatever reason, you can't keep the exact figures in your calculator, or however it is, even if you were to get something slightly different, right? So for example, like here, if I were to do round this to 2, right? So this is equal to that. Oh, okay. Oh, it's exactly 155. Okay. So this wasn't a good example to do that with. Anyway. Right. Oh, sorry. Total cost. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So guys, if you guys are good with the solution on the screen, just kind of give me a quick Genie chat, please and thanks. All right. But Aliyah, if you have that method, if it's been taught to you, then yeah, you could use it. I'd very much like to know what that is. Is it just as simple as keeping 4 decimal places in your working? If that cool. Oh, yeah, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So again, right? So we've started process costing, ladies and gents. So we got some notes. We got step by step how to do the process costing worksheet. Again, it looks actually markedly different from what I was taught. But I wanted to revamp it because what I wanted to be able to do was just basically enter information to the top here and have this bottom part done for me on Excel, right? So to do that, I needed to set it up in a way I could reference cells and that kind of stuff. Anyhow, and it does look a little neater than what I used to have before, because it used to be a lot more working here and not much across here, to be honest. And then it used to kind of be a little confusing sometimes when I was showing students. So I tried to revamp it as best I can. So I hope it's to your liking. Right, anyhow, so folks, that's about it for today. So thanks for joining me, right? If any of you all have any questions you didn't get to ask during class, please feel free to message. Now, the question that you can work if you want is the very next one, Belmo Pan, and I will start class with this next week. So even if you don't do it because you're busy, and I understand, I get that, that's not a problem, I'm not gonna be vexed or anything. We're gonna start next week's class with this question and then segue into the FIFO method, first in, first out. All right? Okay guys, so that's about it for today. Thanks for joining. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, sir.
All right, guys. Yeah, later, everybody. Oh. Let me see. Oh, okay. Right, beginning that materials conversion. 335. What is that, boy? That's right. Yeah, that can work. This is good. I like this. Okay, cool. Board chicken pillow. Nice. Okay, sorry. Naya, I did 2006 before. I did that one. That was the example, actually. Where was it? Here. Kingstown? Yeah, I did it before. That was the example. So that's the whole thing there. I don't know if it's still there, Naya. I see Naya. sorry, Nicholas. So when you're gonna do the 2025 Jan paper one, I have to see if I got the paper one. I don't know if I did. I got the paper two and the paper three. The multiple choice papers that will be a little more difficult to get your hands on sometimes. But if I get it, yeah, I don't place a priority on paper ones because paper ones tend to have a lot of repeats. So I take my time with those, right? Paper two, I want to get that out ASAP. I just I had something I was working on this week that I actually have to finish today, and then I actually have to do that was for 2023. I have 2024 to do, and I want to get it out of the way because I don't want it to be late because it's attract late fees and penalties and things, and I don't want to have to pay any extra money. I rather have to. Okay, but yeah. So thank you guys on YouTube for watching. I don't know who is watching me on YouTube. As in I can't see your names.